After seeing the Tangled Violin, I've been asked by woodworkers and violin makers alike how it's possible to bend such deep, gorgeous flamed maple. You see, if you cut ordinary wood thin enough, it will bend and flex back and do it as many times as you like. Think of that like a bow and arrow. And yet, if you bend it too far, it will break. A violin maker learns that you can take thin wood, and if you bend it against a hot piece of steel or a bending iron, like this, if you pull apart and pull with enough force, the wood will bend and stay that shape forever. And you can do this crooked or straight and form all kinds of bends and patterns with the wood. Violin ribs are cut a little bit thicker than that, so it takes a little more time, but by pulling apart, pulling it against... In fact, I'm going to try to do this in a posture I never have before, so you get my view. So this will be a little awkward, so bear with me. So I'll stand back. Normally I'm hunched right over, but you can see the problem with my head. And so if you pull it, see, that easily, it breaks. Let's try that again. And take a little more time. Let the heat soak through the wood. And this has a moderate amount of flame, and you can see you can bend the wood. And by following around with the shape, you can form the ribs. And violin makers, including Stradivari himself, learned that if you take a piece of metal and back it up, it becomes much easier, quicker, less chance of breaking it. And as the flame gets deeper, you may plunge it into water, and that helps conduct the heat through the wood. And there you can start to see that really is fairly flamed maple right here. But then, that allows the heat to conduct through the wood, and all those cells will relax quicker and easier, and allow you to bend the rib. And you can come back and compensate a little bit and form the shape of a violin rib. When it comes to deep flamed maple, everything changes. And the thing about deep flamed maple is the flames cut across the wood back and forth in waves so steep that as you go to try to bend the wood, it breaks very easily. In fact, very steep to the cross section of the wood, because the flames are so deep, they go back and forth, and that's what gives that luscious, deep, rippling effect under the varnish. An ordinary bending iron goes around most of the form of the C-bout, and that's the most difficult and sharpest bend in the violin. And in order to bend at the deepest flames, it actually takes an intense heat for a very short amount of time, which can't be accomplished with the standard bending iron. Because as you come around, if you were to heat this up hot enough, it burns the wood before you ever make the next part of the bend. So we put away, and of course it's off, the ordinary bending iron, and we go to my best friend for the last almost 40 years. And what it is an old soldering iron. I found at the swap meet. It's very old, but what it allows me to do is to heat it to any temperature I want using just a simple, ordinary light dimmer, and you learn, and I put little marks on it, where to turn it to, and you learn over time how hot, because it's really critical that it be as hot as possible. In fact, it's hot enough to burn the maple. If you just, in fact, you'll see how it starts to darken the maple. And some makers, especially Guarneri, actually like that in the sharp curves. It darkens it to the edge and adds character and flavor. Yet depending upon your style, you may or may not want that. With really deep flames, we do have to plunge the maple into warm or hot water and just let it soak in for just a moment or two. You don't want it to soak too long or you start hurting the quality of the wood and the sound. Then, instead of the ordinary process of just grabbing, putting it against the bending iron, we preheat the bending strap until it's hot enough to almost burn the wood. And if I were to touch this now, it would be very, very hot. In fact, as I put the wood against it, you can hear it sizzle. And the moment you're there, you then pull as hard apart as you can and as hard against it as you can. And this allows you, with that extra heat, to walk around and bend it as tight as you want. Then you can follow through with the rest of the shape. And you can see, wow, it's way overbent. And that's only possible with the extra heat from both sides and that hard pressure pulling apart. And you're better off to go too far than not far enough. It becomes more difficult each time you bend the wood to bend it. And so you're better to go too far and then look for the high spots, push back against it. And the whole time, of course, you're matching it up with the shape of your violin. I prefer to do the tight bend first, but it is possible to do the long sweep first, and then by using a short bending strap with no rivets in it that might dent the wood and making it very hot, it's possible to do the sharp recurve by just positioning it properly, holding it against it, and you can see just as tight of a bend as you want to go on the deepest of flames. And bend it too far so that you can come back and bend it back to the way it should be. The other advantage of bending too far and bringing it back is it tends to make a more stable, relaxed rib. So the violin will flex and move more freely and respond easier to the performer. One more time. Dip the rib in water for a moment. Preheat the bending strap. Pull as hard as you can, both apart and towards the bending iron. That's how the deepest flame is bent for a violin.